have such a repository of strategy and information, just experiences and stories and things that I've lived traveling all over the country, winning contracts, managing these contracts, wrote a whole book about it. I didn't want to lose all that because once you're out of it, you're like, when am I ever going to use this again? If you're not coming from a place of solving problems, which means there's risk, but you have confidence to figure it out, you're in the wrong game. Dollar value is not necessarily going to be the constraint. It's going to be how big can you think? And you don't have to listen to the people in this industry that pound on you, or when you get your cage code and your phone starts ringing and you start getting all the emails. You don't have to do all that stuff. You can just focus on a few simple things and be successful if you want.
All right, welcome back to the Construction Game Podcast. Super excited to have Derek on the line today. Derek, where are you calling in from?
I'm actually out of Detroit metro area.
Yeah. How much snow you guys got out there?
You know, is it the snow or is it the temperatures? I'm not sure. They're about, it's either 6 degrees or 6 inches. I'm not sure which is worse.
Yeah. I originally grew up in Maine, so I'm very familiar with a lot of snow and very cold temperatures.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So Derek, walk us through what part of the government contracting game are you in right now?
Yeah. So for the last 7 years, I've been working to help small businesses enter the federal marketplace. As you know, and many others, there's no shortage of information these days. Actually, it's about having the right plan and the right path to be successful, especially as a GovCon startup in the space. That's actually going to get you like a return on your effort and your energy, and in some instances, your money as well. So for the last 7 years, I've been working, kind of as a liaison to help small businesses, coaching them, mentoring them through.
Yeah, no, I love that because I wish you were around when I first got into this game, because I'd go on the websites and I'd go to these vendor outreach events and I'd get puked on and have all of this stuff, but didn't really know how to thread the needle, actually get the contract. So how did you get involved? Yeah. How'd you get involved?
Yeah. And I was just going to take that one step further to say, I've bounced around all the conferences. I kind of done all the things. And so that's why I'm really passionate, because I've done a lot of things that don't seem to get you anywhere. And then there's some things that if you just focus on them long enough will get you results. But yeah, I actually started out almost accidentally to your question I started out, it was like a job board posting. I went to Oakland University up here in Michigan. And I had come off so many failed jobs, and I, got my bachelor's in finance, MBA in international business, moved out to Chicago, selling to financial advisors, doing the whole retirement finance game. Realized I didn't feel good going to sleep every night with people's retirement plans and questionable type, we can go with 2008, 2009, everything that happened there, right? So that kind of weighed on me and kind of ping-ponged around and found this, again, almost accidentally, job posting for a proposal writer in government contracts posted on my the job posting board. And I didn't know what that was, but I did know that I was pretty desperate. And I did have a bit of a background, nonprofit, proposal writing for a museum. So that was really the only, at the time, the movie War Dogs was not out. Okay, so there was no War Dogs. There was just no sort of mainstream common knowledge of anything about government contracting. And funnily enough, I say it as God ultimately wanted me to be in this, because I interviewed for a proposal writing gig and I turned down the offer. And then I went to go work at State Farm and sell insurance. And that very quickly went nowhere. Then I kind of came back and said, kind of with my tail between my legs, and said, you know what, I'm desperate. I need the opportunity. And so then that was kind of the start of me working for a small government contractor, where kind of the first year I didn't even know what my job was, but the punchline was it had something to do with the government, and I thought that was kind of cool. And that was the punchline that I would tell to my friends and my family.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, and it's so crazy when you think about it. Now, and when we bid a lot of projects, and part of the going after a project, there's two phases to it. There's the technical phase, and then there's the pricing phase.
Absolutely.
So did you work on the technical phase for the proposal writing, or were you more on the pricing side of the proposal?
So I would say at the time that I had joined the company, it was maybe 20 to 25 employees, and many of them were billable. So there wasn't too many overhead folks like me. So the proposal team consisted of like one or two people. It was not robust whatsoever. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with Oasis, but at the time, Oasis, one of the big GWACs, the government-wide acquisition contracts, was being pushed out for the first time. In my first week, that's what it was. It was, okay, go work on the Oasis proposal. And that was how my merit was judged. And as you got to be working on proposals for a couple of years to be able to, tackle something like that. So it was pretty much like doomed from the get-go. And I'm like, are you kidding me? First week on the job, my boss tried to fire me. I mean, she actually technically did fire me because I couldn't figure out Oasis. But my recruiter, who ended up being my mentor for 5 years, he kind of took me under his wing, and then I quickly temporarily got out of proposals, which I was never really in to get started with. And then we went over to more like recruiting, relationship development, working with some of the existing clients with the federal agencies that the company had. So I kind of moved over to relationships and that stage pretty quickly, and then eventually made my way back around to proposals. But yeah, so starting out, it wasn't the technical or the price. And then once I did get back into it, it was primarily just the technical, because they kind of keep the pricing more behind closed doors with the owners,
Understood.
Yeah.
And so like when we first got into really starting to write a lot of our proposals and having these technical proposals that needed to be presented to the government, I actually got marketed by someone. They literally would send me emails and like, hey, we are a proposal writer. Like, do you want help on this proposal? And I had never gone after those type of opportunities. And I finally was like, let's just give it a chance. Let's give it an opportunity. Right. And, I worked very closely with them. They asked me for my past performance. I gave it to them. They asked me for all the different documents, and I was giving it to them. I was feeding them all of the information. And then I still was responsible for the actual pricing. And we ended up submitting on the project, and it was for this Navy project up in Pennsylvania, Mechanicsburg. It was a Navy multiple award construction contract.
I've done work there as well.
Did not get it. Yeah, it was like a $600 million multiple award construction contract, and we did not get it. But we asked for a what do they call them when you go in there and you get the debriefing. We asked for a debriefing, and we went in there and did the debriefing, and they told us like, you were the highest rated contractor in this and this and this, but you guys, your pricing was way too high. And that was the thing that gave me a lot of confidence. Like, okay, we're going to really dial this thing in. If I had someone full-time working on the proposal on this portion, I know we could have tweaked this number here or tweaked that number there and tightened this thing up. So when you were talking about the proposal writing and the technical and going from working with people and then going back to the proposal writing and the technical side, like, how did you get good at it? Did you have someone that actually trained you in that way, or like, how did you actually get good at it?
I didn't. There's very little, what I would say, training and oversight, which is very, very common amongst, small government contractors, right? They're just not established in that sort of way. Everybody has to earn their seat. Otherwise, you don't have a seat. It was a very kind of aggressive and uncomfortable environment to work at many times. But with that being said, we kind of ran like a full desk, meaning, okay, you go out and you find a project, you respond to the project, and if you win, congrats, now you're going to manage the project. Like, that's what I mean. Like, you eat what you kill. So when it comes like specifically to technical, it wasn't just technical, it was the entire life cycle of an opportunity. And the only way that, I relied on resources in terms of like our database. So it's like, all right, there's a folder for past performances that the company has. So like, let's go and see what we're working with here. Okay. What sort of write-ups do we have in terms of staffing plans or QCPs, quality control plans, whatever, that we can customize and tailor to, this requirement. So it was really just a lot of like low-hanging, like seeing what we're working with, seeing what juice I could squeeze out of the lemon with what I had. And then just like a lot of failures and a lot of learning, also a lot of debriefs on my side as well. With the asterisk being, you're not always even going to get a debrief. And yes, communication with contracting can be very inconsistent at times for anybody who's going through that. There can be quite a bit of emotional turmoil around communicating with the contracting officer. But usually the larger the requirement, the more professional and the more that they would kind of prioritize that sort of thing. But yeah, it's unfortunately it was really like blazing the trail and learning from my own lessons and just building and getting better, which takes time, of course.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense. And now you were saying that you help other businesses get into government contracting. Like, do you like what's your game plan or blueprint, or do you use that same blueprint that you went through to teach the government contractors that you are helping now?
So I would say definitely not like what I started out doing, because I learned so much. I worked for the small contractor for a little over 5 years. And where I started versus where I ended was just truly night and day from, all those lessons that I learned. So I bring those now to help really, like I like to say, turn years into months, which is very much the case because we have small businesses that are winning their first contracts in a couple of months, as opposed to, a much longer potential, life cycle. Um, and for me, it's like when I left the company that I worked for, I had signed a 2-year non-compete. So I couldn't go after opportunities. And I didn't even know if I was going to stay in government contracting. But then ultimately what I ended up doing was like, hey, I have such a repository of strategy and information and just experiences and stories and things that I've lived, traveling all over the country, winning contracts, managing these contracts, being in situations that I never thought that I would be in. Wrote a whole book about it, like literally a book about it. And just, I didn't want to lose all that, because once you're out of it, you're like, when am I ever going to use this again? Right. So I kind of wrote everything down. And then that eventually kind of segued to a YouTube channel, which segued into people saying, hey, can you help? And then me taking all those lessons and things that I learned, of what to do and what not to do quickly as a GovCon startup, to start applying that so they don't have to make all those mistakes themselves. So that's, it's a very not like necessarily groundbreaking thing. It was like a very organic growth, I would say.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And so how do you help businesses? Like, so say like I'm a construction company and
Okay.
I want to now start doing government contract, and I reach out to you. Like, how do you help?
For sure. So I offer what's called what I refer to as more like done with you, because I'm well aware this, especially nowadays, where somebody could kind of like drop you in a course, maybe get on a weekly group call or something, and who knows how many people are going to show up on that. And nothing negative about that. I think there's really helpful resources at all stages of the game. I'm just more involved. So we have pipeline bid tracker. I review all of your proposals. We pretty much put like a 12-month milestone targets together. I help you build out what I call your umbrella. I recommend an umbrella strategy where you're not just going after one NAICS code for opportunities. We want to avoid Goldilocks syndrome, which means not finding enough opportunities versus finding too many opportunities, right? So that really dials into teaching systems, bid, no bid frameworks, things like that, but in a very practical sense, so that we can very quickly start putting numbers on the board. Because if you're talking to me, that's the only thing that you should be focused on, especially if you have $0 revenue, in your business as a startup. That's just a hobby. You don't have a business if you don't have any money coming in. You have a hobby. So we need to quickly turn that over to getting some numbers on the board.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. A lot of sense. And honestly, that was like where I was when I first got into the government space. I was a pipe contractor installing underground pipe, and I was now looking at the government space. All right, like where's the opportunity to install underground pipe? And like it's so niche that like there's not that many opportunities. Like, are there some? Yes. But like, is it maybe 1 or 2 or 5 a year versus 100 a year, if like just total general construction? So that's where I had to zoom out, like you were saying, and open myself up to more opportunities so that I could go after government contracts and actually be successful with them. And that's where I really had to lean into relationships and build relationships in the marketplace with other great contractors that could help me get all of these projects to the finish line. And that's one of the things that helped me really grow really quickly, because I wasn't stuck just doing all of everything by myself.
It's largely a mental game, and when you're doing everything by yourself, you start to make emotional decisions instead of what's good for the business, and very often that will eat up a lot of your time.
Yeah, yeah. So do you have a lot of companies that come in that same thought process, like they're just so niched down that they like, oh, I don't, or like, how do you get them to open up to even say, hey, I'm open to doing a general construction project versus just a plumbing project or just an electrical project or just an HVAC project?
For sure. Yeah, I actually love that question. And I get small businesses that are wanting to incorporate some aspects of construction or even just light construction, but also other services as well. And there's really kind of a couple of different, I would call them, models. One, you can take an established business, and these for me are the hardest because when you have an established business, this is what we do. Okay, they've specialized, they become a specialist. Their specialization is what makes them stand out in the commercial marketplace. But then when you come into the federal marketplace, as you said, as you've had to learn, if you're just going to go super, super deep on doing one thing really, really well, you're not necessarily going to have all the opportunity that you would be looking for in the federal space, at least as you're trying to break in. I'm not saying over time, as you develop customers and relationships, you can't do that. You can do that. But when you're trying to break in, I always say that you don't want to double down or triple down on something that hasn't yet proven itself to you. But instead, one of the biggest mistakes that the established make when they come in, they're assuming the government is buying what they're doing in the commercial space exactly the same way. But the truth is, in the federal marketplace, the government buys things very differently in different quantities and different formats, et cetera. And so there's the immediate disruption of, whoa, hey, the federal marketplace is the biggest customer in the world. Why aren't I finding these? And then very quickly people get on the path of, I'm doing something wrong. I need to buy the fancy software. I need to get the better website. I need to get the CAPE statements. I need to do all these shiny object things, when in reality, they're not realizing there was a changing in the rules. Nobody told them that, no, you don't need to be a specialist any longer. Okay, you don't need to be service focused. You need to be mission focused. Being mission focused means you are actually speaking the government's language, and you see these opportunities as problems that you could potentially solve. And again, that's kind of how you back into building out an umbrella.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's definitely, that's exactly how you need to, position yourself. And it's so, and that statement of mission focus versus service focus is so important, because even when you're in the contract, the mission is the mission. So when I'm doing a Navy project, my mission and everybody that works in the Navy's mission is the Navy's mission. Right? And like you have to be super clear about it. And there was this one project we were doing down at the NRL down here in DC, and at the NRL, there's the Naval Research Laboratory, and a lot of the stuff that they do there helps keep our warfighters safe in combat. And one of the people that were running the project management side for the government was a military person, and he basically said that he's like, this place is near and dear to my heart because this place saved my life. The things that we create here actually saved me when I was on the battlefield. And it immediately there was a problem that was happening on the project, and it wasn't because of me, and it wasn't because of that person, but it was just because of the whole environment in NRL. But you could see immediately after he said that, the whole environment just got clear, and we're just mission focused, and we're going to get this thing figured out, and everybody's going to come together to get this mechanical non-maintenance situation cleaned up and get it to the finish line. So I love that thought process, and it's really true.
Really, and it speaks to why the unthinkable can happen, or what people who don't understand this or preach. There's certain dogmas in this industry that I'm very kind of at war with, because I think it screws small businesses over. So I'm very much contested against that. But what you just said really speaks to the reason, being mission focused, why things like this could happen. So, for example, one of my recent client wins was he was replacing a floor, okay, in a government site, small flooring job. think it was 10, 20K. Okay. Nothing, very, very small, maybe a couple of days work, whatever. Required a little bit of had to get licensed for a week because there's a certain spec that they had to meet in terms of how they're putting it down. Whatever. 1 to 2 people, knock it out in a week. Okay. That was flooring. But then after they finished, the core, so the contracting officer representative on the contract had said, we've kind of had to give our work to the same, the small little group of companies over and over. Your guys came in, got this done. I had no issues. I've got an HVAC job that I need done. Now, this is what gets really interesting because HVAC has nothing to do with flooring. But if they were a specialist, right, or if they weren't in that opportunity, they're on the outside looking in, I need to be a specialist, right? Opportunities like that won't come up, or at the very least, they won't be open to them. But because, of course, my client is mission focused, he's not going to say anything but, yes, sir, send me the statement of work and I'll kind of, I'll send you a formal proposal, whatever, answer any questions you have, etc. And he'll find the right team, the right people or whatever to get it done as a true business owner, would. If you're not open to those sorts of things and realizing that that's how the federal space actually works, and having a bit of an umbrella approach, once again, where you're open to different NAICS codes and keywords, these should be fluid. These should grow and adapt with your business. If your business isn't growing, it's dying. This whole idea of get out a whiteboard, let's get all of our ducks in the row, like figure out the perfect strategy before you actually get out there and do anything is absolute nonsense. And it's built by people who want to sell you expensive, fancy software and all these things before you even want a contract. I say no, go get in the trenches. Don't be so niche, but also don't be so open. Have a plethora, have several focus areas, see what happens, double down, triple down on what works, build a relationship. You'll be amazed at what happens after that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. Totally agree with you. It reminded me of this story. Our first $2.6 million project was in Albany, Georgia, and the way I got that project was I was marketing to this lady, this contracting officer there, and I was living in Florida at the time. And she's like, "Oh yeah, we're having a vendor outreach event that you can come here on a Tuesday." Mm-hmm. And so I left early in the morning. I drove up there. I went through the gate, went through badging and all that stuff. And I sit down and she comes in the room. She's like, "Hey, you're the only one that showed up. There was a tornado warning that came through the area and everybody else canceled." And I'm just sitting there, this lady, and I'm talking about my business and all this stuff. And then she starts telling me about this $2.6 million project. Had we ever done a door job? No. Not ever in our life. And now all of a sudden we had 269 roll-up doors that we had to replace around the base. But I said, yes, send me over the scope of work. We'll review it. And it's exactly what we did. And we found, 3 contractors to give us pricing on it. So we got competitively bid pricing on it. We then provided our proposal to the government, and we finished that project. And then it gave us some confidence, but we developed that relationship because then they brought us inside their like complex building. Yet it was all this crazy security. And it's where they used to anodize all of the guns and stuff. So we're in there, and I remember it distinctly, like the superintendent that I had hired to help me on that roll-up door project. He's like, "Oliver, man, I wouldn't do this job. I wouldn't take this job." And I was like, "Why not? Why not?" And he kept saying, "It's too complex. It's too complex." And it's like, I don't need to be the person that needs to understand everything. So what I did in that scenario was I found the company that had previously installed the entire system. They were this huge company out in Michigan that does this all across the entire United States. And I called them, and then we built our relationship out, and they're like, "Yeah, we do this all the time." They were explaining everything, and they basically were able to capture the entire scope of work and help me get the project to the finish line. And then, I looked at the numbers at the end of the day, and I'm like, man, I am so glad I never listened to that guy and just said, "Oh, I'm not going to do this," because I didn't have full clarity on how to actually get it done. But one thing that I did do was I went with the best contractor that knew exactly how to do it. Like, I wasn't trying to create a learning curve for anybody. So I went with the contractor that knew how to get it done, and we got it done together.
I'm looking at your sign in your background that says everything is figure outable, and it's, I mean, I'm sure it's intentionally chosen for the theme of this podcast that you run, and it just it echoes the theme in government contracting so great. Again, being a problem solver. If you're not coming from a place of solving problems, which means there's risk, but you have confidence to figure it out, you're in the wrong game. But if that is something that you can do, there's, you know, dollar value is not necessarily going to be the constraint. It's going to be how big can you think, or how big of teams, and how can you manage without, you know what I'm saying? Taking on other levels of risks. But people look at $1 million job and they're, oh boy, you know what I'm saying? I'm like, if you only knew, like, that's not even the big deal. There's other things you'll find out, but you quickly realize that.
Wow, that what you said there, dollar value isn't even the constraint. It's how big you can think is the constraint. And that oh my goodness,
that and it's is, not being it's not being reckless. We're not talking about being reckless, and you did such a great job of buttoning up how you're saying this. But at the end of the day, it's very true.
Yeah. No, I mean, because like for me, growing up, I always wanted to create a $10 million business per year. And one of the reasons why I wanted to create it is I got in an argument with my dad, and my dad was in construction growing up as well. And he's like, man, you'll never be able to create what I created. So growing up, obviously, that was my target. Right. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, getting the first jobs was so hard. I mean, the first job we ever got was a $30,000 job, and it ended up costing me $60,000 to get it done. So I was basically out the door to even right in the beginning. And I'm so glad that I didn't quit at that moment. And I kept getting better and figuring it out. But that whole thought process is really important because, when I first started in the construction space, I struggled, and now knowing what I know, it's totally different. So no, I love that. Now, how do you think? What were you gonna say?
Oh, you're good.
Yeah. How do you think about different states? And how do you think about different states?
In what terms context?
In terms of bidding projects. So like when you were bidding, yeah.
So I've always been federally focused, so I can't speak to like city, state, local, or SLED contracts like other municipalities. I've only focused on federal. Unless you're speaking to like managing teams across, like a tri-state area, something like that. I'm not sure which direction.
Yeah, so like on the federal side, one of the things that was like a game changer for me was like I was bidding on projects federally in Washington, D.C., and then bidding on projects in Albany, Georgia, and I was bidding on projects in Florida. And, and what that allowed to happen was when Washington, D.C. was like really quiet, there was things going on down in Florida. But then when Florida was quiet, then there was also things going on in Texas. But because I was in all of those different markets, it allowed me to continue to grow my business and keep it moving forward.
Yeah. So what comes up for me a lot with that is team, of course, right? You're going to have your on-site, SSHOs, your site safety health officers. Sometimes they wear one hat, sometimes they wear multiple hats. You're going to have your PMs, you're going to have your schedulers back in the office. These are typical, right? Even on a smaller jobs, you're going to have one or two of these positions probably wearing multiple hats, at least for construction. Now, in terms of subcontractors, you're of course going to bid that out, locally, because per diem and whatever, it's just not going to make any sense, right? So you got to do that. And then you're probably going to either have a superintendent that you're going to fly out there or drive out there, or you're going to have to get somebody local. And for me, this is where it becomes really important. And one of the big learning lessons that we had to go through, because we were also, I forget if this one was in Mechanicsburg. It was National Guard. I think it was Mechanicsburg, and it was for a firing range. And it was to clean it, repaint it, refurbish it. And you guys you'll find, like, even on SAM.gov, you'll see a lot of like firing range jobs out there. And I think they're good jobs because there's a lot of them all over the place. So good past performance builder. What we did was, not me, but the decision makers in the company, they definitely decided to save a little bit of money. and hired a local site super whom they never met. And this guy had been doing it for 30 plus years. And there's a lot of these road warriors or whatever out there. Like, this is just what they do, and they know how the game is played very often better than you do. So what we had found out was, and this job had LDs on it, it had liquidated damages, just kind of like setting the tone of where this project ultimately headed into. This job, did not finish on time. And the more that we looked into it was that he was intentionally doing things wrong because his incentivization was not aligned with our company's incentivization. He wanted to keep a job and keep getting paid as long as he possibly could, which meant the more he could drag the job out and kind of milk the job, he was a milker, the longer he would have a job before he'd have to jump on the next train, because he was just for the project. And because we had liquidated damages, we ended up having to, I don't remember how many days. It was like 30, 40 days. It was a long time. We had to pay those LDs for. So painful learning lesson. Incentivize people to finish the job on time, on budget, or on time under budget, as opposed to kind of being at different levels incentivization. Because ultimately, if you're not keeping a pulse on the project, it's going to cost you more than you think you're going to save by not doing it.
Yeah, no, I'm in total agreement with that. And yeah, no, that's, yeah, you gotta be in alignment on these projects, and because they can go sideways so quickly, very quickly. And I mean, we have projects where we got $4,400 a day in liquidated damages. So,
yeah,
after 10 days, it's $44,000. After 20 days, it's $88,000. So the bill gets very big, very quickly. So you want to make sure everybody's in alignment and everybody's moving the ball down the field the right way. And I lost my train of thought before, so I do apologize, but I got it back. And I wanted to finish what I was saying when you were saying it's not your resources that are constricting you, it's your mind that'll constrict you. So the $10 million a year story, like in the beginning, I was trying to get these projects off the ground, and it was really, really tough. But once I got them rolling, all of a sudden, like we landed that $2.6 million job in Albany, Georgia. We landed a $500,000 job for the GSA up here in DC. We landed an $800,000 job for Tyndall Air Force Base. We landed an $800,000 job for the USDA down in Gainesville, Florida. And all of a sudden, like we were starting to really build momentum. And then we hit that $10 million mark. But then like my vision didn't expand from there, right? I stayed right in that mark. I was at 12, then I went down to 5 and went to 7 and 10 because my vision and my thinking didn't expand. And it wasn't until my thinking expanded that I could really take advantage of the government space and really grow my business to the next level. So it really was a statement that really resonated with me, and I appreciate you going back to that for me.
So I'm really glad that you said that too, because we've spoken about a number of things on this episode, and I think one of the things that that is literally something that has to do with all the things that we spoke about, because what is the biggest bottleneck in the small business owner's business? It's the owner, and it's not just the owner, but it's their vision. So whether they're first coming in and they're, wanted to be a specialist, right? We spoke about that. They're limiting in their vision. Or if a core wants to, offer something that's out of a different NAICS code or even a different industry, are you going to take that up or not? That's being, up to the owner's vision, right? So yeah, everything we're talking about has to do with your openness, your comfortability, also your, more than anything, your ability to be resourceful, as everything is figure outable, like it all boils down to that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sir. So any challenges that you've faced in this business? I know you talked a little bit about some liquidated damages, but any other challenges? I like to hear some of that stuff.
So many challenges. You might have to help me out with this one, to give me a category or something, because there's so many things that once you learn them, you're like, my God, I wish I knew this when I started, and the list kind of is endless. Like for who, or I guess under what context would be helpful.
Yeah. So, I mean, I even loved your story about, the superintendent, because I remember being in that space, and I even get people now. It's like, they're like, how do you do projects all over the nation? It's like, well, one of the things that we do is like, we've built great relationships with our current superintendents. And like, when we bring on a new superintendent, we don't just put them on a job and just hope and pray that this person can do what he says he can do. Like, especially, these people that have come in and they got 30 years of experience. Oftentimes it's 30 years of experience, but now they're stuck in their own ways. They're not going to be listening to you and following the plans and the specs that need to be followed. So
That's
like,
right.
we always partner them with another superintendent, so that they learn the McKinsey way, how McKinsey responds, how McKinsey is proactive, how McKinsey stays in alignment with the subcontractors, how McKinsey stays in alignment with the government. Because oftentimes the government will come out there on the project and say, hey, we got to start doing this, we got to start doing that, trying to run the project. But that's not how we run our projects, and we don't run our projects that way because we can get in trouble that way.
That's
So
right.
it's really important to have a really strong team, but then also have your team be trained in a way that you all are in alignment, and you can run these projects from different states. Now, do you, I guess, when you are coach your current clients, do you recommend that they bid projects in Florida and Georgia and DC, or do you have them focus on a specific area that they're currently located in?
Yeah. So we're not geographically focused by state, especially because we have a lot of folks that are into services as well, where you're able to manage that remotely. We're all 50 states, which geography isn't the only filter. It's not the only way to focus. So of course there are certainly other things that we kind of reduce by in terms of our bid, no bid decision makings, and the targets and the agencies and all that stuff. I will share, a different client of mine, but this was just over the fall when the government was shut down. We were still bidding and winning contracts. So we, because contracting officers, they were still active. They did still have budget money that they were able to spend. So another one of my clients, I had been working with him for a few months, and he got his first award, and it was for a concrete paving job, asphalt paving job. And so this was about 4 hours away. So I believe it crossed one state line. Trying to remember the exact states. I think he was in North Carolina, and it was one of the surrounding states there. But it was about a 4 hour drive. I remember that because he ended up doing it multiple times. But what ended up happening was he was working with a local company, and then there was also the asphalt provider. And this kind of quickly potentially turned into a nightmare situation. Just supposed to be a 1 week job. But what happened was the asphalt provider was an hour away. So by the time it arrived at location, it had cooled off about 50%. And then the subcontractor just kind of doing their thing, just all right, put it on in, and they start pouring this stuff. And anybody knows about pouring asphalt that's not on temperature, it's going to set up, it's going to crack, it's going to be lumpy, and it's not going to be usable. And then with my client being 4 hours away, thinking everything's fine, right? So the lesson learned there, even though I had, as I do with everybody, I say, keep your team on a very short leash. And I call it a short leash. And we were just on a coaching call last night, and we were actually talking about this again. And I was just reminding him some of those points, because he's like, what would you have done differently? And I was like, I would have had the contract with the asphalt provider directly, because I would have said, do not send me an invoice for this. You need to fix this somehow, right? But then the sub, they should have never approved it. But the problem was, he was not involved in a way where the sub should have FaceTimed him. They should have did a little sample, look good, boss, like whatever, right? This isn't about, what is it? The rotisserie chicken thing, like set it and forget it. No, you have to be involved in all of your contracts. And if it's not you, it's a lead or some other team member. So that was just crossing one state line. And so he ended up going there like multiple days, driving 4 hours, and he was a very unhappy camper for that week. Luckily, And you could imagine, right? Like what he was going through, and I was sending him some emails like at midnight, and it's just like, dude, it's gonna be okay. You're gonna get through this. So he invoiced. He's still waiting for them to actually like reimburse his bond, but the job itself has been invoiced. But yeah, so there's just there's so much to unwrap in something like that, right? So I think stories really can just tell so much.
Yeah, no, and I mean, especially, we do a lot of federal highway work, and that's 100% right. You got to have the asphalt temperature's got to be at a certain temperature when you're paving, and if it's not, like, government can just reject it, and now you're stuck tearing it all out, and it's just, now it's hard enough to make money the first time, let alone trying to make it the second time. So yeah, no, that's definitely legit.
Credit to him just for having the grit and the wherewithal to kind of have the thick skin to get through it. I definitely give him a lot of credit for, he did great. I'm like, I didn't want that for your first contract. I didn't want that for his first. I tell everybody, you're gonna run into it. It's gonna happen. You cannot avoid. Every contract is different. Stuff will happen. You will have some hard contracts. I just didn't want it for his first, but he did great.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, you gotta. Yeah, with this game, there's just so many things that it's construction. There's so many different things that can go wrong, and they will go wrong. But the only difference between people that succeed and fail is, like, did you quit? And if you quit in the middle of it, you're just going to create a mess and a very painful situation for yourself. But if you continue to move forward and you correct it, and you correct the issue, and you keep moving forward, there's been so many clients where they still give us more work because they know that we're reliable. They know that we're not going to quit. They know that we're not going to leave them high and dry when they need us most. And we still get repeat business, even if a project doesn't go as planned or as we all thought it would.
It's the difference. It's being mission focused once again.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's great. So how do people get in contact with you?
Well, we're pretty much everywhere in social media. So my avatar is just Govkid Method. My name is Derek James. My website is govkidmethod.com. You check out the free content. If you want to get the book, govkidmethod.com/book goes into detail into my story and a lot of what we talked about today in terms of the umbrella and some of the other strategies that I recommend.
Awesome. What does Govkid mean?
So not many people ask that question. So kudos to asking that question. So, my story is, I won 32 contracts worth $15 million by my 30th birthday for small business. And then, as I explained, I did the 2-year not compete, and I did the transition and started, sharing my knowledge with others. I had come up against so much adversity in coming into the game at age 25. It started out with like week 1 with my boss wanting to fire me, and then working in a company with a lot of like left brain engineers or people who had crossed over from the government side of things. There's a lot of that, especially when you get into like IT companies, which is partly what we were into at the time. You get a lot of that. And here I was, like, this right-brained, very creative kid who knew nothing about government contracting. I just knew, like, I was very passionate, had a big heart, and just wanted to, I was in one of the worst places of my life at the time. I was $60K in debt of student loans, and come off a couple of failed jobs, as well as I owned a pizza business for a year. So I sunk all my life savings into that. So I was desperate. I needed to make something work. And my first contract was for road salt, but it's Get me back on track here. What was the question?
Govkid. What is Govkid?
Yeah, Govkid. So anyways, thank you. So I had such a chip on my shoulder because then as I started to grow, I would go to the conferences, and anybody who's in the game long enough knows that there's the after parties that happen, and then there's the things that shouldn't happen, and we won't get into that on the podcast. I'll save the viewers from that. But in any industry, there's lots of things that are not correct, we will say, if you look hard enough. And I was asked to leave so many meetings. There's many meetings where I was the only white guy, and I was asked, and it was crazy. Like, it was ridiculous. And then when it came time for me to, kind of part ways, it was because there was a lieutenant colonel who was hired because our company had grown, and he wanted my position. So it got very toxic, and I'm just not that type of guy. I'm not built for that. But in the military, very often that's how you climb, especially when you get in the higher ranks. You have to play games, and I was being set up to fail left and right. So I had so much kind of, I don't know if you guys swear on this, but just so much stuff against me. When I left there, I had such a chip on my shoulder, and I had been up against so much of like, you need to do things this way. It has to be like this. And it's just like this kind of old, stuffy, archaic dogma. My mission was essentially to show everyday people who want to get into government contracting as a startup to show if you want to work hard enough and you can have an open mind like we talked about today and be resourceful, you can do this. And you don't have to listen to the people in this industry that pound on you, or when you get your cage code and your phone starts ringing and you start getting all the emails. You don't have to do all that stuff. You can just focus on a few simple things and be successful if you want to. So Govkid was really just the big chip on my shoulder, which maybe you can still tell is still there a little bit, but I don't tap into it as much these days, just to show people that there is a different way, because I didn't get that chance, and I wanted to, in my small way, try to give others that chance.
Yeah, that's great. That's really good. Yeah, it sounds like we were in a similar boat in 2000. Yeah, I was 25 years old, and it's like both were in debt, both were trying to figure this thing out. But it sounds like we both stuck to it and kept getting better at the government game, and now here we are. So that's awesome. It's really cool.
Love it.
Good. It's good stuff.